I was in the computer store, holding my husband's silver notebook with both hands shaking, without really understanding what was happening, when the technician, a guy of about 32 years old called Lucas Mendez, looked at me with an expression that I will never forget. It was fear mixed with pity. That kind of look you give to someone who is about to fall off a cliff and doesn't know it. He had just opened some files to diagnose the problem that I said was slowness in the system. It was a Thursday in March, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, temperature of 28 degrees. The store was on Avenida Central, number 1200, downtown Riverside in California, and I had gone there thinking it was just a virus or a full memory. My name is Elena Rodriguez. I'm 67 years old. I've been a naturalized Mexican-American for 43 years, and at that moment my whole life was imploding without me knowing it yet. The technician asked me to go with him to a small room in the back away from the other customers and employees. He closed the door, took a deep breath, and said exactly like that, "Mrs. Rodriguez, please don't scream and listen to me carefully. I found files on that computer that show that you are in serious danger. You need to pack your bags now and leave the house before it's too late." She showed the notebook screen to me, and I started reading, without understanding at first. They were conversations in English and Spanish mixed, messages exchanged between my husband Thomas and my own younger sister Carla, my sister who lived in our guest house at the back for 5 years since she became a widow. Messages dated the last 8 months talking about me as if I were a problem to be solved. One of them said Thomas has already transferred everything. She won't find out until it's too late, and Carla's answer was perfect love. The only thing left is the house papers, and we can finally get rid of her. I felt my stomach turn. My mouth went dry instantly. My heart started that acceleration that feels like my chest is going to explode. I kept reading because I needed to make sure. I wasn't misunderstanding, even though every cell in my body already knew the truth. Another message from Thomas said she signed everything yesterday without reading it as always. Too stupid to questioning anything I put in front of her. The lawyer said that in 60 days, everything will be in my name and we can send her away without a penny, Carla replied. I'm anxious, love. 40 years of putting up with this idiot pretending to care is killing me. When she finds out she lost everything, it's going to be the best day of my life. There was a whole sequence of messages planning to make me sign a power of attorney that gave him total control of everything. Our 3-bedroom house valued at $750,000, which is in my name because it was an inheritance from my mother. My savings account of $420,000, gathered from 52 years of work as a nurse. The stocks I bought for $380,000 over 30 years. The land in Tijuana in Mexico, valued at $210,000 that my father left me. Everything, absolutely everything was being transferred into his name through documents he made me sign, saying it was for updating taxes or retirement planning or any lie he invented, and I trusted blindly because it was mine. Husband of 42 years of marriage that I thought was solid and true. Coach Lucas brought me a chair because my legs gave way. He offered me water that I couldn't drink. He continued showing me more files. He had an entire folder called Plan E with a detailed schedule. The first phase was completed. Bank transfers had already been made. The deed of the house had already been changed and was just awaiting final registration at the notary's office, scheduled for 12 days. From now, the shares had already been transferred to his and Carla's joint account, opened 3 months ago in a different bank. The second phase described as isolation and removal. Messages discussing how they would make me appear mentally incapable. They had recorded my conversations edited to appear confusing. They had filmed moments in which I forgot something common and normal for my age, like where I left my car keys or the name of a distant acquaintance. They were creating a false dossier to have me banned in court, alleging dementia. They had even consulted a psychiatrist who Lucas later discovered in the metadata was actually an actor hired for $2,500 to produce a false report. The third phase was described simply as deposition. They didn't say explicitly what it meant, but from between the lines and euphemisms used, I realized with growing horror that they were planning to put me in some cheap nursing home. There was Thomas's research on nursing homes in other states, preferably far from California, focusing on places that accepted patients with Medicaid, which was for people without their own resources. The cheapest cost $1,900 a month in Nevada. He had written next to it perfect. Far enough that no one will visit, and cheap enough to pay for a few years until the rest is resolved. The fourth and final phase had no name, just a date. August 28th of that year, in 5 months and 11 days exactly. Beneath that date, a single sentence from Thomas to Carla. By then, the problem will be permanently resolved, and we will be free to live our own life together with her money. Carla had responded with a heart and champagne emoji. I stared at that screen without blinking, without breathing properly, my brain refusing to process that my husband, father of my 3 children, a man who slept next to me for 42 years, was planning not just to rob me, but to eliminate me. The word was there implicitly, but clearly. Permanently resolved, leaving no room for interpretation. Lucas the technician was pale too. He said he needed to show me that because he wouldn't be able to live with himself if he didn't do anything. He asked if I had somewhere to go immediately, if I had someone I trusted to help. My brain was still stuck. I could only ask in a voice that didn't sound like me how many proofs he could give me. He had already prepared a pen drive with copies of everything, entire folders of conversations, covering 8 months, financial files showing the transfers, scanned documents with my signature that I didn't even remember giving, research on nursing homes, research on how to get a spouse interdicted, research that made me vomit right there in the trash can in the living room. He had researched poisons not detectable in an autopsy, about how to simulate a domestic accident in an elderly person, about life insurance and how long after death the beneficiary receives it. Thomas had 3 insurance policies in my name totaling $1,100,000 that he had made me sign last year, saying that it was protection for me. Now I understood protection for who. Lucas helped me get up. He said that I needed to act quickly, because if Thomas realized that the notebook had been seen by someone, he would accelerate the plans. He gave me the flash drive. He also gave me the card from a lawyer specializing in financial crime who was his cousin, a lawyer called Ricardo Fuentes, office at Magnolia Street number 3800, and he made me promise that I would not go home alone, that I would not confront my husband without legal and police protection. I managed to function enough to leave that store. I got into my car, a 7-year-old blue Honda Civic that I paid for myself. I sat in the parking lot without starting the engine for an indefinite period of time. It could have been 10 minutes or 1 hour. The clock said 4:20 in the afternoon when I finally managed checking. Sun still shining through the window, people passing by normally, shopping and living normal lives while mine was over. I thought about 42 years of marriage. I met Thomas Rodriguez when I was 25, he was 27. I was a newly qualified nurse working at a hospital in San Diego. He was a radiology technician at the same hospital. A handsome man with green eyes and an easy smile. He courted me for 6 months before I agreed to go out. With him, we got married a year later in a small but beautiful ceremony in the church in San Diego, with 50 guests. Honeymoon in Cancun for 5 days, which was magical. We came back and rented a small 1-bedroom apartment, both of us working hard. I often worked double shifts, saving every penny for a better future. We had our first son Daniel 2 years after the wedding, a beautiful boy weighing 3 kilos and 400 grams, born after 17 hours of difficult labor. Thomas seemed like a dedicated father at that time. He woke up at dawn to help with bottles, changed diapers, sang lullabies in Spanish that he learned to really please me. Being white American, 3 years later, our daughter Victoria arrived, a girl with dark hair and huge eyes, 2 kilos and 900 grams. Easier birth this time. Family growing up in an apartment that was cramped. I continued working even with 2 small children. Because one salary wasn't enough, my mother helped with the children during the day. Thomas worked the afternoon shift, so I stayed with them in the morning. The system worked, but it was exhausting. 5 years later, our youngest son, Gabriel, arrived, 3 kilos and 100 grams. Cesarean section because he was sitting. Difficult recovery, but it was worth every second when I saw him. 3 children, impossible apartment. We finally managed to buy our first small 2-bedroom house in a not very good area for $190,000, which seemed like a fortune at the time. 30-year mortgage, the 2 working to pay. I took on extra shifts whenever I could. Thomas sometimes complained that we didn't see each other enough, but said he understood that it was for the children's future. Children growing up, public school, but good. I helped with homework every night after a 12-hour shift. Weekends were Daniel's football, Victoria's dance classes, later Gabriel's basketball, constant running but happy. I thought we were a united and hard-working family, building a decent life. My mother passed away when I was 43. She left it to me and my sister Carla, her house in Riverside, a modest, 3-bedroom house valued at the time at $380,000. We made an agreement that I would keep the house and pay Carla $190,000 for her share in installments over 5 years. We sold our small house. I paid off Carla with that money, plus what we had saved. We moved to my mother's house, which was bigger and in a better neighborhood. Teenage children each had their own room finally. I continued working hard. I became a senior nurse at the hospital after 28 years of service, better salary. I was able to save real money for the first time in my life. Thomas had a few different jobs over the years. He started as a technician, but didn't progress much. He switched to selling medical equipment for a while, then worked in an insurance company, then returned to the hospital in an administrative role. He never earned as much as me, but he always worked, so I never complained. My focus was on raising my children well and ensuring a stable future. I paid for college for all 3 of them with a lot of sacrifice. Daniel graduated in engineering, cost $98,000 over the course of 5 years. Victoria studied administration, cost $86,000 in 4 years. Gabriel studied law, cost $123,000 in 7 years, because he repeated some subjects, total of $307,000 invested in their education. I took out loans, used savings, worked extra shifts for years. I retired 4 years ago at 63 with a modest pension of $3,100 a month after 52 years working since I was 11 when I helped my mother clean houses in Mexico before we immigrated. Thomas retired 2 years ago with a benefit of less than $1,800 because he had periods without contributing. Together, we had $4,900 a month, which was enough to live well without luxuries. House paid off, old but working cars, reasonable health for his age. I thought we would finally have peaceful years together, traveling a little and enjoying grandchildren. The 3 children married, Daniel with 2 5-year-old twin daughters, Victoria with a 3-year-old son, Gabriel still without children, but married for 2 years, apparently normal and happy family. Photos in all the walls of our house showing the history of 42 years together, birthdays, graduations, weddings, births, moments that seemed real. And now I discovered that at least in the last 8 months they had been a complete lie. My sister Carla had been widowed 6 years ago. Her husband died of a sudden heart attack at the age of 61. She was devastated. She lost their house because it was mortgaged, and she couldn't afford it on her own, with her receptionist's salary. I immediately offered her to live with us. Thomas said what house it was, big, but how much better would it be in the guest house? In the back that had a bedroom, bathroom, and small kitchen. We renovated that for her with my money. About $15,000. Carla moved in and seemed grateful. She always helped with cleaning the main house. She cooked for us sometimes. We spent time together watching Mexican soap operas and gossiping. Or I thought it was sisterly gossip, when in fact she must have been reporting everything to Thomas. 5 years of her living there. 5 years that I now realize was time that Thomas needed to plan everything meticulously. Signs that I ignored started to appear in my memory, now sitting in that car. About 8 months ago, Thomas started to be more insistent about me signing documents. He said it was to organize our finances for when we were older, to protect the children from inheritance taxes, to ensure that everything would be simple if something happened to one of us. It made sense at the time. I trusted him completely. I signed everything he put in front of me, powers of our attorney, changes of account ownership, documents that he said were deed updates to include the children as beneficiaries. I never read carefully because it was my husband of 41 years at the time. Why the hell would I suspect? A few months ago, I started to notice that Thomas spent a lot of time at Carla's house helping her with her computer, which kept giving problems according to him. They stayed there for hours. I thought it was beautiful that he helped my widow sister. What a good man I thought. Sometimes I got close, and the conversation stopped abruptly. They told me that they were discussing a surprise gift for me. I believed it. When I started to forget silly things like any 67-year-old person forgets, where I left my phone or if I had already taken my blood pressure medicine, Thomas made a huge point of pointing it out in front of Carla. Look, Carla saw how forgetful she is becoming. I'm worried. Is this not the start of something serious? Carla agreed with a face of false concern that now I understand it was acting. A few times I noticed the two exchanging looks that I didn't understand. I thought it was genuine concern for me, selfish as I am. I interpreted it as love and care when it was conspiracy and evil. 3 months ago, I went with Thomas to open a new bank account, which he said was to separate money from future trips we wanted to take. I signed papers. I didn't even see properly that it was a joint account between him and someone else. That other person was Carla. They used my money to open an account for both of them and then transferred my shares there without me knowing. 2 months ago, Thomas took me to a lawyer who he said was a specialist in estate planning, a blonde woman in her 50s, very professional, a chic office. She explained about trusts and asset protection and the importance of updated powers of attorney. I signed everything right there with her and 2 witnesses present, everything legalized and authenticated. I was signing my own sentence, and I didn't even know. The lawyer was an accomplice or deceived. I'll never know either. A month ago, Carla casually commented that I had repeated the same story 3 times that week. She said with a laugh that I was getting older. Me? Thomas agreed very seriously. He said that maybe we should see a doctor. He took it so far that I even made an appointment with a geriatrician for the following month because I started to worry about myself. They were planting doubt in my head about my own sanity, perfect gaslighting. My 3 children had no idea about any of this. They lived in other cities. Daniel in Sacramento working as a civil engineer, Victoria in San Francisco managing an accounting office, Gabriel in Los Angeles. Practicing law in a small firm, I spoke to each one on the phone once a week or so. Less normal conversations, grandchildren, work, nothing deep. None of them suspected that their father was planning to destroy their mother. Thomas was always good at keeping up appearances. In his calls with his children, he was a dedicated husband, worried about his wife's health, saying that I was more forgetful, but that we were getting along well, planting seeds so that when he tried to ban me, I would have their support because they thought it was for my good. Still sitting in that car, at 4:45 in the afternoon, I finally managed to call the lawyer Ricardo Fuentes, whose card Lucas had given me. The secretary answered. I explained in a trembling voice that it was an emergency, that I had evidence of financial fraud and conspiracy against me. She passed it on to me immediately. A lawyer with a firm voice told me to go straight to his office, that he would cancel my 5 o'clock appointment to see me. He asked if I was safe, if I had the evidence with me. I confirmed. Everything. I drove the 23 minutes to his office on autopilot, 4-story commercial building, office on the 2nd floor, medium-sized room with professional but not ostentatious decoration. Ricardo Fuentes looked about 48 years old, gray hair on the sides, black framed glasses, serious but kind expression. He welcomed me with a firm handshake, offered coffee which I accepted, needing the caffeine. We sat down. He connected the pen drive to his computer and started looking at the files. His face became increasingly serious. He asked if he could make copies of everything. I authorized it. We spent the next 3 hours reviewing each document, each conversation, each piece of evidence. He was making extensive notes, putting together a chronology, identifying crimes. Financial fraud was obviously forgery of documents as well, conspiracy to commit fraud, financial abuse of the elderly, which in California is a federal crime, possible attempted murder, or at least conspiracy to do so, which were the most serious charges. Amounts involved were in excess of $1,700,000. Counting house, savings, shares, land, insurance. Ricardo said it was one of the most elaborate and cruel cases he had ever seen in 22 years of law. He explained that we would need to act quickly on several fronts. Firstly, freeze all transfers that have not yet been finalized, according to the Bulletin of Occurrence due to fraud and threat. Third, obtain a restraining order against Thomas and Carla. Fourth, file an action to annul all documents signed under false pretext. Fifth, sue civilly for moral and material damages. Sixth, cooperate with the prosecutor for criminal proceedings. It's important to protect what hasn't yet been transferred. Eighth, to recover what was stolen. I listened to all that in a daze, but starting to feel something different growing inside me. It was no longer just shock and pain. It was anger, cold and dense. Anger. These people that I loved and trusted planned to destroy me, rob me, probably kill me. Why? Pure greed. They wanted my money that I worked 52 years to collect. They wanted my house that I inherited from my mother, who worked until her hands bled to get it. They wanted to erase me of existence, to live comfortably with the fruits of my work. Ricardo asked if I had somewhere to stay safely. I thought quickly. My children were far away, friends I didn't want to get involved yet. Then I remembered second cousin Beatrice, who lived on the other side of Riverside. We weren't very close, but we got along well. I called her. I explained superficially that I was having serious problems with Thomas and needed a place to sleep for a few nights. She didn't hesitate. I said to go immediately. I wrote down her address for Ricardo. He insisted on accompanying me there in the car from him to guarantee my safety. Before leaving the office, he made me promise that I wouldn't call Thomas. I wouldn't answer his messages. I wouldn't look for anything at home alone. The police would do that with me when appropriate. I agreed to everything. 8:10 in the evening, we arrived at Beatrice's house, a simple but welcoming single-story house. She was 64 years old, a widow too. She welcomed us with a tight hug, even though I still didn't understand what was happening. Ricardo said goodbye, saying that first thing the next morning he would be taking legal action. He gave me his personal cell phone for any emergency. Beatrice took me to the guest room, offered me food that I couldn't eat. I took a long shower, letting hot water run until it ran out. I put on pajamas borrowed from her. I lay down on the bed and only then allowed myself to cry. I cried for hours, sobs that shook my entire body. Soaked pillow, silent crying so as not to scare Beatrice. Crying from 42 years of marriage revealed as a lie. Not all of it, perhaps. The first 30 years were probably real. But when exactly did Thomas decide to cheat on me with my own sister? When did he start to cheat on me? Conspiracy? It was just 8 months or years ago, and I only have proof of 8 months. My sister, my younger sister who I helped my whole life. When she lost her job at 28, I lent her $3,000. When she got married, I threw a party costing $8,000 because she couldn't afford it. When she had problems in her marriage, I paid for couples therapy for a year, costing $6,000. When she became a widow, I offered her a house without charging rent for 5 years, saving her around $90,000 in housing. I renovated a guest house, spending $15,000. I helped with her bills when she had no money, adding up over the years to about $20,000. The total I invested in her easily exceeded $140,000 without counting time and sisterly love. And she reciprocated by sleeping with my husband and planning my death. Like, how does someone do that? I tried to sleep, but I couldn't. I stared at the dark ceiling, mentally replaying the conversations I saw on that notebook. Permanently resolved, cowardly euphemism for murder. They were really going to kill me. Undetectable poison researched. Simulated domestic accident researched. Insurance life of $1,100,000 paid in case of accidental death. Obvious the plan. They would put me in a cheap nursing home in Nevada, visit me rarely or never, wait months until I was completely isolated and without contacts. Then some accident would happen. Fatal fall on the stairs. Accidental overdose of medicines, anything that seemed unfortunate but plausible for a 67-year-old woman with alleged dementia. Investigation would be minimal. Thomas, as a devastated widower, would receive insurance and keep everything that had already transferred to his name. He and Carla, they would live happily ever after with my money while I would rot in a cheap coffin. The thought made me sit up in bed suddenly, heart racing again, nausea rising. I ran to the bathroom and vomited bile because my stomach was empty. Beatrice appeared at the door, worried, helped me wash my face, made me sit in the living room, prepared chamomile tea. Finally, I told her everything. I showed her the files on the pen drive on her laptop. She turned pale, hand over her mouth, tears in her eyes, repeating, "I don't believe it. I don't believe it," as they can. She held my hand and said that I would stay there as long as I needed, that I wasn't alone. I thanked her through new tears. I went back to bed. This time exhaustion won, and I slept soundly until 7:15 in the morning. I woke up disoriented for seconds before everything came back like an avalanche. Friday, the day after the discovery, I sat on the bed breathing deeply. I couldn't fall apart. I had to act. I got up. I washed my face. Beatrice had already prepared breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, fruit, strong coffee. I forced myself to eat some. 9 in the morning. Ricardo called saying that he had already filed an emergency petition to freeze all accounts and properties. The judge had granted a temporary injunction based on the preliminary evidence. All the accounts in my name or that I had recently added were frozen immediately. Thomas couldn't access anything, couldn't sell the house, couldn't touch shares, nothing. Ricardo had already scheduled a Meeting for 10:30 at the police station to register a formal police report. She gave the address. Beatrice offered to take me. We arrived at the police station, a dull ground-floor building. We were received by a detective called Sarah Chen, Asian American, about 40 years old, professional but empathetic expression. Small interrogation room, table, uncomfortable chairs, recorder. I told the story from start to finish, showing all the evidence. She asked specific questions. How long had she been married? 42 years. History of domestic violence? Never. Recent verbal threats? Not direct, but the messages contained veiled threats clear. Total assets involved, $1,700,000 approximately. Recorded everything. Made copies of all the files on the flash drive. Said that the prosecutor's office would be notified immediately if it was serious enough for quick action. Asked if I felt in immediate physical danger. I honestly answered that I didn't know. Thomas still didn't know that I found out, so maybe not yet, but as soon as I found out, I could accelerate plans. Sarah agreed and said that she would recommend an emergency restraining order. We left there at 12:30. Ricardo called, saying that a restraining order had been granted for 72 hours initially, with a hearing scheduled for the following Tuesday to be extended for an indefinite period. A bailiff would be sent to notify Thomas and Carla later that afternoon. They would be required to maintain a minimum distance of 100 meters from me, prohibited from direct or indirect contact. Violation would result in immediate arrest. I felt simultaneous relief and terror. Relief for legal protection. Terror for imagining their reaction upon receiving notification. Thomas had no idea what I found out. He must have been at home thinking I was shopping or visiting a friend as I always did on Fridays. Telephone. It rang 4 times since yesterday. I didn't answer any of them. He left messages. Where are you? I'm worried. Please call me. A tone of false concern that now made me nauseous. Friday afternoon, Ricardo got a court order to search and seize all of Thomas and Carla's computers and cell phones. Police would execute it Monday morning with a warrant. If they tried to destroy evidence in the next few days, it wouldn't matter, because we already had copies of everything. Late afternoon, I received a message from an unknown number. It was from Detective. Sarah, Thomas, and Carla had just been notified of the restraining order. Thomas was visibly shocked, according to the officer. He started shouting that it was absurd, that I was crazy, that he was going to sue for defamation. Carla literally fainted and needed paramedics. Finding out that they were caught, left. Thomas, disconcerted but angry, bailiff reported that he tried to call me immediately and was furious when I didn't answer. He started sending messages in violation of the restraining order, messages saying that I was crazy, ungrateful, that he dedicated his entire life to me, that I was going to leave regret, that he would prove that he was senile and forcibly hospitalize me. A printout of everything was sent to Sarah, who assured that this would be used against him. Violation of a restriction order in the first hour would result in additional charges. Saturday dawned, and I didn't know what to do with myself. Beatrice suggested that we start drawing up a long-term plan. I needed to think about where I would live permanently. I couldn't stay in the house that was mine, because Thomas still had keys and knew everything there. Even with a restriction order, I didn't feel safe. A difficult but necessary decision. I would ask the judge to authorize me to sell the house, splitting the value half and half with Thomas, despite him not deserving anything. But the house was my inheritance, and I wanted total distance. With the sale, I would be able to buy a smaller apartment of my own in a place he didn't know. Start over. A strange word at 67 years old, but necessary. On Sunday, I called my 3 children one by one. The most difficult conversations of my life. Daniel answered happily until he heard my trembling voice. He asked what happened. I told him briefly. Shocked silence on the other side. Then explosion. He's going to pay for this, Mom. I'm going to sue him. I'm going to destroy him. I tried to calm him down, but Daniel was out of his mind. He asked to come and see me immediately. I told him to wait for Monday after the police investigation. I didn't want him crossing paths with his father yet. Victoria cried profusely, as her father can, as her Aunt Carla can. She repeated over and over. She offered money immediately if I needed it. I thanked her, saying that I was doing well financially for now. Gabriel, the lawyer, was more clinical, asked for details of everything, said that he knew better lawyers than Ricardo if I wanted to change. I replied that I was trusting Ricardo for now, but I thanked him for his support. The 3 children were horrified, especially by the participation of Aunt Carla, who they considered close family. Monday morning, 9 o'clock, team of 6 police officers. They executed a search warrant at my house. Ricardo kept me informed through messages. They seized 3 computers, 4 cell phones, tablets, physical documents, pen drives, everything that could contain evidence. Thomas tried to prevent it by claiming illegal invasion. He was informed that resisting would result in arrest for obstruction of justice. Carla was hysterical, according to the report, screaming that she was innocent, that Thomas forced her, trying to blame it all on him. The police didn't care. They took everything for forensic analysis. Tuesday was a hearing to extend the restriction order. I went to the forum accompanied by Ricardo. The first time I had seen Thomas in 6 days, he was on the other side of the room with his lawyer, a man. In a cheap gray suit, Thomas looked at me with pure hatred, an expression I have never seen on him in 42 years. Judge named Honor Patricia Williams, black woman, about 55 years old, stern expression, heard arguments on both sides. Thomas's lawyer claimed that everything was misunderstood, that conversations on the computer were taken out of context, that Thomas was genuinely concerned about his wife's mental health and was just trying to protect family assets. Ricardo presented the complete evidence, explicit conversations, planning fraud, transfers already made, research on poison and accidents, everything. The judge was visibly disturbed, extended a restraining order for a whole year, determined that none of the assets in dispute could be moved, appointed an independent administrator to manage everything until final judicial resolution, scheduled a preliminary trial for 2 months later. Thomas left the forum visibly furious, shouted across the street that I was going to regret it, that he would prove that I was crazy. A police officer who was present warned that one more violation would result in arrest. The following weeks were a whirlwind of legal procedures, depositions, expertise, forensic analysis, confirmed the authenticity of all the messages found on the notebook. They even recovered deleted messages that were even more incriminating. Carla, in a desperate attempt to save her skin, made a deal with the prosecution, agreed to testify against Thomas in exchange for a reduced sentence, confessed everything in a 4-hour recorded testimony. The case started 3 years ago, not 8 months. Thomas deliberately seduced her right after she became a widow, knowing that she was vulnerable. He gradually planted an idea about how much money I had, about how foolish I was, and too confident, about how they could have a good life if they could gain access to my assets. Carla resisted at first, according to her, but Thomas was persistent, promised eternal love, promised trips, a comfortable life, said that I was not needed by anyone, that my children were already grown up and independent, that I would live well in a nursing home and wouldn't even notice a difference because I was really becoming senile. Lies that Carla wanted to believe because greed won out over sisterly love. She admitted to participating in falsifying documents, in recordings edited to make me appear confused, in administration of sleeping pills crushed into my food a few times to make me drowsier and less alert. Her confession included a horrible detail. Final plan for August involved gradually increasing the dosage of my blood pressure medication until it caused a stroke or heart attack that would appear natural. Thomas had studied my medication, knew the lethal dosage, planned to make it look like I had mixed up medication for dementia. Carla's testimony was crucial. Prosecutors offered Thomas a deal too, 5 years in prison if he confessed. He arrogantly refused, said he would prove innocence, that Carla was lying, that I made it all up out of senile paranoia. His lawyer tried to discredit evidence by claiming that messages could have been fabricated, but forensics was conclusive. Metadata, timestamps, everything authentic. May arrived, 3 months since discovery. Criminal trial began, lasted 2 weeks. Jury of 12 people heard all the evidence. Messages were read aloud in court, each cruel word echoing in the room. I saw Thomas getting paler and paler as the prosecutor presented her case. He tried to maintain an arrogant posture, but he was melting. The climax was when the prosecutor showed his research on poisons and simulating accidents. The jury was visibly shocked. A lady on the jury of some tried years cried. Deliberation lasted only 5 hours. Verdict: guilty on all charges: financial fraud against the elderly, forgery of documents, conspiracy to commit murder, embezzlement. Thomas turned white, tried to argue. Judge banged gavel. Sentence would come in 2 weeks. Sentence was 28 years in federal prison. Thomas was 69 years old, would be out at 97 if he lived and behaved well. Carla, who made a deal, got 6 years for cooperating. Both were also sentenced to full refund of all misappropriated money plus moral damages valued at $500,000. Civil battle ran parallel. I recovered deed to the house that was fraudulently changed. I recovered all bank accounts. I recovered illegally transferred shares. Total recovered was $1,600,000 of the $1,700,000 that I had before. $100,000 were lost in transfer fees and other costs that were not recoverable, plus $500,000 in moral damages when and if they managed to pay. What it's unlikely, I hired a broker and sold a house in Riverside for $800,000. The market was good. I used $350,000 to buy a beautiful 2-bedroom apartment in a quiet area of Palm Springs, a condominium for people over 55 with security, swimming pool, gym, social activities. I used $200,000 to invest in conservative funds, yielding $6,000 a month or so. I kept the rest as an emergency reserve, total with previous investments and selling the house. I had a net worth of approximately $1,400,000. No rich but comfortable to live the rest of my life with dignity. Moving to Palm Springs was liberating. 95 square meter apartment, balcony with views of the mountains, 2 bedrooms including 1 suite, modern kitchen that I renovated spending $28,000. I decorated everything new, light and cheerful colors. Nothing that reminded me of the previous house, beige, light blue, white, plants everywhere, natural light coming in through large windows, a feeling of peace that I hadn't felt in years, maybe decades. The first months were adaptation. I met neighbors in the condominium, mostly retired people between 60 and 80 years old. Interesting stories, lives lived. I formed a group of friends. Rosa, 72 years old, a former teacher who was widowed 10 years ago. Margaret, 66 years old, divorced twice with good humor. Jennifer, 69, a former nurse like me. Carol, 74 years old, grandmother of 8 grandchildren. Linda, 68 years old, who lost her husband to cancer. We met for coffee every Tuesday and Thursday. We talked about everything: granddaughters, health, politics, soap operas, books, travel. They knew my story because I told it briefly. They were all horrified but impressed with my recovery. They offered non-judgmental support, true friendship. I joined a yoga class for seniors 3 times a week. An instructor called Mike, 50 years old, patient and funny. I learned to literally breathe again, to stretch my body that was always tense, to meditate. I started walking every morning at 6, 40 minutes around the condominium. Palm Springs is beautiful early in the morning. Fresh air, mountains in the background, peaceful silence. Walks became a time for reflection, processing everything that happened. 42 years of marriage, they were not completely fake. The first 30 years were real, they were good. I had 3 wonderful children from that marriage, countless happy moments. Thomas somehow changed, greed corrupted him, or maybe it was always like that and hid it well. I will never know for sure. Decide to go to therapy. Therapist called Dr. Helen Morrison, 63 years old, trauma specialist, cozy office with comfortable sofas, weekly sessions, process betrayal, work through irrational guilt I felt, why I didn't realize, why I trusted blindly. Helen helped me understand that trust in a decades-long relationship. It's normal and healthy. What betrayal says about the traitor's character, not the victim's. It took months to internalize this. Some days I still find myself thinking where I went wrong, but there are fewer and fewer of them. October arrived, 7 months since discovery. I was sitting on the balcony drinking green tea when the phone rang. Unknown number, I answered cautiously. A polite male voice introduced himself. My name is Roberto Silva. I'm a friend of Lucas Mendez, the IT technician who helped you. I hope I'm not bothering you. Lucas told me his story, obviously with your permission, because he told me I mentioned to him that I went through a similar situation. I was curious. I arranged a coffee with Roberto, a 74-year-old man, widower. His wife died 8 years ago from Alzheimer's. His adult children tried to declare him incapable of controlling his pension. He found out. He fought in court. He won. He moved away from his children permanently. We talked for 3 hours in that first coffee, an immediate connection between people who had survived family betrayal. We started meeting weekly. Coffees became lunches. Lunches became dinners. It wasn't romance, it was companionship. Someone who understood without having to explain. Roberto introduced me to the support group he attended. Fortnightly meetings at the Palm Springs Community Center, 10 to 15 people, mostly elderly, all victims of financial or emotional abuse by family members, heartbreaking stories, son who drained his mother's account with Alzheimer's, granddaughter who forged grandfather's will, brother who sold his sister's house without permission. Hearing that made me realize that I was not alone, that a silent epidemic of elder abuse exists and no one talks about. I started sharing my story at meetings. Talking was therapeutic. Seeing other people nodding and understanding validated my pain. Group organizer, a man called Frank, who is 82 years old, suggested that we write our stories, that awareness was important. I started writing, first just for myself, catharsis, then thinking about publishing, maybe helping other women recognize signs before it was too late. Writing made me relive everything, but it also gave me control over the narrative. I was no longer a passive victim. I was an active survivor telling the truth. Christmas arrived, the first without Thomas in 43 years. My 3 children came to visit me. They brought grandchildren. The apartment was full of life and noise. Daniel brought his wife and 6-year-old twins. Victoria brought her husband and 4-year-old son. Gabriel brought his wife. No children yet, but trying. We cooked together, decorated the small tree I bought, watched Christmas movies. Children played in the condominium pool under supervision. Christmas night, we had a traditional supper, turkey, mash, apple pie, sitting around the new table in my dining room. I looked around seeing my adult children, beautiful grandchildren. I thought about how I almost lost this. I was almost eliminated due to other people's greed. I wouldn't be a grandmother present. I wouldn't have these moments. Gratitude filled me. Daniel made a toast. Mom, the strongest woman we know. Everyone raised glasses, even the children with juice. I cried, but they were good tears. Children hugged me together, group hug like they did when they were little ones. Perfect moment. Thomas was in federal prison in Arizona that Christmas. I hope he thought about what he lost. Not for me, but for the children and grandchildren who would never see him again. Carla was in state prison in California, without visitors, because no one in the family wanted to see her. Loneliness they deserved. New Year arrived. Resolution was to live each day fully, not to waste time with resentment, but also not to forget lesson. Following March, a full year since that fateful Thursday in the computer store, dark anniversary but important milestone, I survived. More than I survived. I rebuilt myself. Roberto took me to a special dinner in an elegant restaurant. We talked about the journey of the last year. He held my hand across the table, asked if I would be open to considering a romantic relationship eventually. Not pressure, just possibility. I smiled. I said I was open but slowly. He agreed. Slow is good. We have time. Relationship with Roberto developed gently. First kiss happened 2 months later, shy and sweet. Like teenagers, nothing like the intense passion of youth. It was something deeper, companionship based on mutual respect and shared experiences. He never tried. I didn't rush anything. He respected my space and process. I introduced him to my children on the next visit. They approved of him. Daniel said that anyone who treated his mother well had his approval. Victoria found Roberto charming. Gabriel the lawyer joked about checking criminal records, but he was smiling. Grandchildren called him Grandpa Beto, which Roberto loved. I started working voluntarily in a support center for elderly victims of abuse, 3 afternoons a week. I received calls, listened to stories, offered resources, connected people with lawyers and social workers. Work painful but necessary. Each person I helped gave meaning to my suffering, transformed trauma into purpose. I finished the book manuscript in July, 240 pages, telling the complete story from childhood in Mexico to reconstruction in Palm Springs. I sent it to small publishers. 5 rejected it. 6th one was interested, independent publisher called Phoenix Press, specializing in survival memoirs. They offered a modest contract, an advance of $8,000. It wasn't about money. It was about the message. I signed it. Editing process took 6 months. Publisher suggested changes to protect privacy, but keeping it true, I accepted. The book was released the following March, 2 full years after discovery. The title chosen was Betrayed But Not Broken, Surviving Family. Betrayal After 60, simple cover, Photo of elderly hands holding flowers, sale S. Were modest, 2,000 copies in the first 3 months, but reviews were incredible. Women writing that they saw themselves in the story, that found the courage to act against their own abusers. I received 57 emails from readers. Each one made me cry and smile simultaneously. An 81-year-old lady from Miami wrote that she used my book as evidence in her own case against her son who was exploiting her. She won. Another 64-year-old from Chicago said that she recognized signs in her daughter-in-law's behavior and intervened before losing everything. Small impact perhaps, but significant. I appeared on a local podcast about aging and finance. 45-minute interview, sensitive and respectful interviewer, positive feedback, support center where I volunteered, asked to give monthly lectures on recognizing and preventing financial abuse. I accepted. Public speaking was never strong, but the message was too important. The first lecture had 23 people, mostly women between 50 and 80. Hands were shaking, holding notes. Voice broke a few times, but I continued, told the story, offered a checklist of warning signs, pressure to sign documents with no time to read, sudden changes in family dynamics, isolation from friends and other family members overly interested in finances, frequent requests for money with elaborate excuses, unauthorized changes to accounts or properties, attempts to obtain broad powers of attorney, comments about being a burden or a hindrance, exclusion from important family decisions. Several people in the audience nodded, recognizing signs. 3 came to talk to me later. One was in an almost identical situation. I connected her with Ricardo, my lawyer. Another year passed, 3 years since discovery. Life established a new routine, mornings walking, afternoons volunteering or writing a second book on preventing elder abuse, nights with Roberto having dinner or watching movies, weekends with friends from the condominium, monthly visits from the children alternating who came, excellent health, all normal exams, controlled blood pressure, stable weight at 60 kilos, gray hair that I decided to stop dyeing, leave natural, wrinkles that show a life lived without shame. Roberto asked for a serious official relationship 6 months ago. He said he was too old for jokes. He wanted a real commitment. I accepted. Not marriage. Neither of us wanted complicate things legally again. But exclusive emotional commitment. He gave me a simple silver ring. I wear it with pride. Thomas tried to appeal the sentence twice. Both times were denied. He is serving a full sentence. I receive automatic notifications from the prison system about his status. I don't ask, but I'm grateful to know. He tried to write me a letter 8 months ago. The prison sent it asking if I agreed to receive it. I refused. I have nothing to say to him. I don't hate it anymore. I don't feel anything. Complete. Indifference is true freedom. Carla also tried to contact him through a prison mediation program, a system where a prisoner can ask for a restorative meeting with a victim. I declined. Forgiveness does not require reconciliation. I can forgive for my own peace without needing to see her again. Some criticized my decision. Therapist Helen defended, said that forgiveness is a personal process without a single formula. My children visit Thomas once a year, out of a sense of filial duty, not out of love. Conversations are cold and short. He still tries to justify himself. They don't want to listen. None of them take their grandchildren. Thomas will never meet great-grandchildren if there are any. His legacy is prison and shame. My legacy is being rebuilt. Victoria's granddaughter told me last week that she wants to be strong like Grandma when she grows up. A comment from a 5-year-old child, but it broke me with good emotion. I now sit on the balcony of the apartment at 7 in the evening. Cool October breeze, temperatures of 24 degrees, comfortable, glass of iced tea on the table next to me, open book on my lap, but I'm not reading. I'm watching the sunset painting mountains orange and pink, absurdly beautiful sky. Roberto will arrive in half an hour for dinner that I prepared it, grilled salmon with vegetables, new recipe that I learned in a healthy cooking class that I started. Life at 70 is not what I imagined at 25 getting married full of hope. It is definitely not what I imagined 3 years ago when I was still married to Thomas, but it is my life, a life that I built literally from the rubble of devastating betrayal. I am not naive as I was. I trust carefully now. I check documents before signing. I maintain finances in my own name. I have a lawyer at speed dial, but I also didn't let trauma make me bitter or closed off. I still love. I still trust selectively. I still believe in human kindness because I see kindness every week in my friends, in my children, in Roberto, in the volunteers at the support center. Kindness exists even if evil also exists. At 70, I learned that dignity cannot to be taken away, only given. For 42 years, I gave my dignity to marriage that I didn't deserve. In the last 3 years, I recovered dignity not through revenge, although legal justice was satisfactory. I recovered it through choosing to live well, choosing to grow, choosing to help others, choosing to love again even in fear. Phone vibrates. Message from Daniel. Photo of grandchildren holding drawings they made for me. Hearts and flowers and written, "Grandma, we love you." I smile. I respond with heart emoji. These children will never know the full horror of what almost happened. They will grow up knowing only that Grandma is strong and loving, that a true family is who stays, not who shares DNA. Roberto arrives ringing the doorbell. I open the door. He comes in with flowers. He always brings flowers. White lilies this time, my favorites. A quick greeting kiss. He goes to the kitchen to help finish dinner. We work side by side. He cuts salad. I finish fish. We talk about his day, about my day. Beautiful trivialities of common life. We have dinner on the balcony under the starry sky. We talk about planning a trip to Portugal next year. Always I wanted to go. Roberto too. We'll do it together. After dinner we wash the dishes together. He leaves at 10 because neither of us likes sleeping out yet. We prefer our own beds, our own space, a relationship without pressure or suffocating expectations. Just genuine company. I'm alone in the silent apartment. I do skincare at night, a routine that I've learned to value, self-care as an act of self-love. I lie in the king-size bed that I bought, soft Egyptian cotton sheets, down pillows, comfort that I deserve and can afford. I look at the ceiling thinking about the journey absurdity of the last 3 years. If someone told me this story in film format, I would say it is exaggerated, too melodramatic, but it happened. Every horrible part and every beautiful part happened. I survived because I chose to survive. I could have given up in that first month of despair. Many do. Suicide statistics in elderly victims of family abuse are scary. I was almost a statistic, but anger saved me initially. Then anger turned into determination, determination into action, action into justice, justice into healing. Not complete yet, perhaps never complete, permanent. Scars in shape of occasional distrust, rare but disturbing nightmares where I wake up thinking I'm still in that house, still married to Thomas, still being deceived. But Roberto taught me technique. When I wake up from a nightmare, I look around listing 5 things I see proving where I really am. Light blue curtain, white ceramic lamp, photo of grandchildren on the dresser, reading chair in the corner, closet door ajar. 5 things. I'm in my apartment. I'm safe. I'm free. I go back to sleep in peace. Tomorrow is Saturday. Group of friends go to Palm Desert to shop and have lunch. Small pleasures of common life. Rosa wants to find a gift for her grandson's birthday. Margaret needs a dress for her niece's wedding. Jennifer simply likes to go for a walk. Carol wants new decoration for the living room. Linda goes because she likes the company. I go for all of this, and because I can, because I have my own money, my own car, my own life, freedom that I almost lost. While I sleep, Thomas sleeps in a federal prison cell, uncomfortable bunk beds, dangerous cellmates, rigid routine, bad food, no dignity, lost everything he had, pension confiscated to pay restitution, house sold, belongings auctioned, children who barely speak to him, grandchildren he doesn't know. Freedom lost until the age of 97, if he lives. Justice is not always satisfactory, but in this case it was proportional. I don't wish him more suffering. I don't wish anything. Indifference is a gift I gave. Myself, Carla leaves in 2.5 years if she behaves well. Women's prison is different but also difficult. She is 69 years old now. She will leave at 71 or 72. What she will do, where she will go, it is not my problem. We have lost sisterly relationship permanently. There is no going back. Some bonds when broken cannot be mended, nor should they. She made choices. Consequences are hers to bear. My choice now is to live well, not for revenge, but because I deserve. It's 70 years is not the end. It is a new chapter. Women my age are often invisible in society, discarded as irrelevant. I have proven that a 70-year-old woman can fight. She can win. She can rebuild completely. She can find love new. It can have purpose. It can be happy. A message I try to convey in lectures and in the book. It's never too late. While you breathe, you have power. I gave up trying to fully understand why Thomas and Carla did what they did. Psychological explanations help. Little greed is a simple but unsatisfactory answer. Perhaps Thomas always had a dark side that he hid well. Perhaps the financial pressure of retirement revealed his character true. Maybe Carla was always envious of me disguised as brotherly love. Maybe the loneliness of widowhood made her vulnerable to his manipulation. Maybe they are both just bad people who made bad decisions. It doesn't matter anymore. It matters that I survived, that I recovered what was mine, that I built a new life, better in many ways than the previous one. Previous life had comfort of familiarity, but also complacency, took security, took blessings for granted. New life has awareness, conscious gratitude for each peaceful day, deep appreciation of genuine relationships, appreciation of independence and autonomy. I don't want to go back to who I was before, even if I could. The woman I am now is stronger, wiser, more complete. She paid a high price for this wisdom, but she has it. The sun rises over Palm. Springs at 6:15, the alarm clock goes off. I start a new day, a routine I love. I put on hiking shoes, comfortable clothes. I go for a morning walk, fresh air filling my lungs, firm steps on the pavement, majestic mountains all around, infinite blue sky. I am alive. I'm free. I walk and I think about all the women who couldn't escape, who lost everything, who didn't have an honest computer technician like Lucas to warn them, who didn't have a competent lawyer like Ricardo, who didn't have a legal system that worked albeit slowly, who didn't have supportive children, who didn't have the resources to fight. I walk for them too, their survival through mine. I go home, quick shower, healthy breakfast, granola with yogurt and fruit, strong coffee, simple but satisfying life. 9 o'clock friends arrive for a walk. We go in Margaret's car, a spacious SUV. We drive talking and laughing to Palm Desert. 40 minutes on a scenic road. We arrive at the mall. Hours strolling from store to store, trying on clothes, laughing at silly jokes. We have lunch at a Mexican restaurant, tacos and virgin margaritas because none of us drink anymore. We come back late, tired, but happy. The kind of tiredness that is good for a day well lived, a quiet night at home. I call Victoria. We talk for an hour about grandchildren, her work, life, the close relationship that we rebuild. She visits me next month, bringing her family. I can't wait. Before bed, I open the document on the computer. Second book in progress. Practical guide for elderly people to protect themselves from family abuse. Checklist, legal resources, stories of survivors. It will be published next year if everything goes well. I write 1,000 more words before I get tired. I save it. I close the computer. Evening ritual, skincare, comfortable pajamas, cozy bed. I look at the photo on the bedside table. A recent photo of me with Roberto and all my friends at a group dinner. 8 women, genuinely smiling, all survivors of something. Betrayals, divorces, widowhood, illnesses, losses. But here we are, smiling, living, thriving. I put my head on the pillow, close my eyes, sleep in complete peace. No nightmares tonight, just vague and peaceful dreams. Tomorrow it starts again. Another day of life that I built brick by brick after they tried to destroy me. Not only did I survive, I flourished. 70 years and flourishing. Who would have thought? Certainly not Thomas, who bet that I would fall apart. Certainly not Carla, who completely underestimated me. But I knew, deep down I always knew, the strength I carry comes from 52 years of working since I was a child. It comes from immigrating to a new country at 24, speaking poor English and building a life. It comes from raising 3 children, often alone, while working full-time. It comes from generations of strong Mexican women before me. My mother who cleaned houses until her hands bled to educate her daughters. My grandmother who raised 7 children alone after her husband died young. Great-grandmother who survived the Mexican Revolution and built a life of literal ashes. Strength is in the blood. Thomas never had a chance to truly break me. He could have killed me physically perhaps if plan had continued. But breaking my spirit, impossible. Spirit forged in generations of survival. His betrayal was brutal, but not definitive. It did not define me. I defined myself by response, by struggle, by recovery, by rebirth. Elena Rodriguez. 70 years old, retired nurse, mother of 3, grandmother of 5, author, volunteer, survivor, woman who looks back without regret and forward with hope. That's me. No victim, never again a victim. Protagonist of my own story that continues to be written one glorious day at a time.